Hello and welcome to my top 3 tarot decks for fall. We are in the middle of fall here in the southern parts of Sweden, so I thought it would be fitting to create this list for you. Either you perhaps want to get inspired, perhaps you are in a symbolic or inner fall, even though you might not even be in a seasonal fall. So when compiling this list, I thought of both the aesthetic of the deck and I thought of the energy of the deck. So the aesthetics is more so rich tone and moody, more darker themed decks. And for the energy, I thought of decks that represent the energy of fall or are fitting, will provide the energy that I'm looking for during fall. So when I think of fall, I think of this turning inwards, and we are not in the depth of it just yet, but we are turning inward. We are getting there. And also I think of change when I think of fall. Fall really is a season of change, at least for me, especially inner change. Change that starts from within. So I start to reflect and perhaps even question parts of my life, things that I want to change. Who do I want to become? Who do I want to be next year? So these decks are decks that will provide reflection, but also give you a slight push. It will perhaps challenge you a bit in one way or the other. So let's get moving. First off, we have the Witch Sister Tarot. Which I feel is very fitting during the early period of fall especially. So perhaps September to October. So why I chose this deck is because whenever I am working with this deck, it shifts me immediately from the mundane, minute details of modern everyday life into something more ancient, spiritual, profound, energetic, something that is being felt, and I shift focus, and everything that stressed me out about the mundane life seems so insignificant when I tap into this deck, and it makes me reprioritize and think differently about my life. It makes me want to reconnect to something more eternal, something more sustainable, something more wholesome, something deeper. So there's that deck. Next up, we have the Darkwood Tarot. This deck feels very suitable more so for late fall, perhaps October to November. Sort of Scorpio season vibes. Now this deck provokes me a little bit in a very good way. And it helps me to get out of victim mode and victim mentality, but in a slightly gentle way. And it helps me to steer clear of negative thoughts, negative patterns, and it keeps me on track on my path, and especially my witchy spiritual path. It really asks me to be accountable. It doesn't really tolerate me going off track and then complaining about it. It's more honest than that, but it is very loving in doing so. You can't hide with this one. So it shifts my focus, it shifts my perception about things that are happening in my life, and helps me to keep me centered and moving in a direction that I know is better for me. So next up, the last deck on this list is the Mary-L Tarot. I could not make a list like this without having the love of my life on this list. The Mary-L Tarot, now we are really moving into almost winter season. It's the last part of autumn or fall, and we are starting to move into winter and to really going within to the depths of our psyche. And this is what this deck is so good at. It is very challenging because it is not your typical traditional tarot deck. It goes so insanely deep. And you really have to zone out of your mundane everyday life to tap into the wisdom and the sacredness of this deck, because it is so intensely soul focused and soul driven. This is really the deck that is saying to you, everything that is happening in your life is a part of your soul evolution. Tap into that way of experiencing your life. Tap into that way of perceiving events in your life, even the challenging ones. It is really asking you to be conscious. And look at the bigger picture of your soul evolution. So it is a quite demanding deck, but you really get what you work for when you are invested in working with this deck. I love this deck. This deck is the love of my life. This is the greatest Five of Pentacles I've ever seen. So, ending with that. Now, I want to say that all of these decks that I've recommended here are based on experience, my working experience with these decks, how they have responded to questions that I've asked, what sort of cards show up, the stories that they tell, and how the card sort of responds energetically to what I'm thinking about, to what I'm wondering about. Is it supportive? Is it challenging? Does it want to offer me something else? Does it want to put me in a slightly different trajectory? So it's based on my working experience with these decks. So that is all for today. I really hope you enjoyed this experience and that you got inspired to pick out your own fall decks. If you are in fall season, or in fall season symbolically, or soul-wise. So, hope to see you next time. Take care.